25 minutes past 4. Welcome back to PM Drive, right here on the Voice of the Cape 91.3 FM with myself, Yahya Ismail, standing in for Muhammad Junaid Shafiq today. But in studio, we have analyst Hassan Logart, who will be speaking to us a bit about the mining industry and justice in the mining industry as he attends the alternative mining Indaba right here in Cape Town. With the theme of energy transition for who and rather critical minerals for who. Mr. Logart, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for having me inside your house.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And we know that there is a mining Indaba happening at the CTICC at the moment, and that's your big bosses and your investors and your politicians speaking about the mining industry. But at the same time, the decisions that they take as investors, as politicians, affects the workers on the ground, and that is essentially why there is this alternative mining Indaba also happening. Because you can't just have the big bosses deciding and not worrying about how these decisions will actually affect miners on the ground. We know that there were a lot of incidents last year with mining, especially in Stilfontein as well. So with this mining Indaba that you attended, what are some of the objectives of this event? And you mentioned that the theme is critical minerals for who. So what is this whole event about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole issue of energy transition and critical minerals and how they get used for whom and at what cost is a burning issue that many civil society groups have been interested in dealing with. I think in the official Indaba, they also have a theme on critical minerals. And unfortunately, I think Donald Trump interfered, and somehow people had to address this. And I think we will also come back to discussing a little bit of that, because his commitment to breaking everything, talking about drill, baby, drill, means that for the US and others, they have a great chance of losing this battle to keep up with China around the critical transition minerals, where China is having a dominant role. And if we can stay out this guy's 4 years, we could all be okay. So for us, the issue is that, I mean, I've just come out of a session now. We are around the corner from you, so I could just walk. It's the 16th year of the alternative mining Indaba. And I facilitated a session yesterday in the evening with a number of activists from the unions, NGOs, and intellectuals from universities, to try and find out what has happened to this movement. It is showing middle age spread, but it's only a teenager, 16 years. It seems that we've lost some of our luster, some of our energy, some of our anger, because we were supposed to be the alternative. We were supposed to be the Indaba that asks questions about the power of corporations, how they bully people, and what the responses should be. We have consistently told them over this last 16 years, and I've been to most of them. I missed probably 2 or so. We've consistently told them that we have yet to see one mining community that has given way, been resettled, relocated forcefully or by connivance, right? See such a community better off because they moved, So we raise the issues, the ethical questions, the questions about what does it mean for the environment, what does it mean for communities in particular, because we're there to speak for ourselves. In fact, I was saying in the meeting at the church that we must make space. There will be more and more activists coming to speak for the trees and the water. I know it sounds like this, we will speak for the trees, but the rights to nature is really, really critical and is enshrined in, I think, the Ecuadorian Constitution. We don't have it. But every time we try to defend the sea, the oceans, Gwede Mantashe starts accusing NGOs of being in the service of Europeans and others. We have a difficulty. Obviously, we have a real difficulty that our people are hungry, need resources to survive. But at what cost is the critical issue we're trying to look at?
I think that's something that we have seen over the last few years, especially in South Africa, because we remember that there was a petroleum company that wanted to potentially explore drilling for oil, drilling for gas off the shore of South Africa. And when civil society came and said, no, you're not going to be standing for this, there was a lot of pushback by government saying that civil society doesn't want to create jobs, they don't care about the economy and all of those things. And also at the same time, we also know that the mining industry, it's not, it's something that contributes a lot to economic growth in South Africa, but it's not without its scandal as well. And we know that a lot of the times we see miners or your unskilled miners trying to really achieve a salary that they can actually live off. And when people speak about having adequate wages being paid to them, companies usually push back. When you look at the upper management in of those companies, they have exorbitant salaries compared to your average worker on the ground within mines. So how do we deal with the issue of companies being a bit more sensitive to the workers, being a bit more sensitive to the environment and how they impact the environment? And also, how can we as citizens in South Africa actually hold both government, who is also involved in the mining industry, as well as these private corporations accountable for the actions? As you mentioned, you haven't seen one situation where a community was relocated yet for what you call it, for mining, and the community actually ended up quite
worse off, actually.
Yeah, worse off, essentially. So how do we actually keep them accountable? But we're going to head into the news headlines quickly, and when we return, we'll continue with that
and
question.
I can answer that. Yeah,
definitely.
What do you do?
Are we coming back? Welcome back to PM Drive, right on the Voice of the Cape. It's just gone 4:32. We do have analyst Hassan Logat here in studio speaking to us about justice in the mining sector. And before the break, we spoke about how can we actually keep corporations accountable for the actions. As you mentioned, you haven't seen one community being relocated for mining that's actually better off yet. Companies, sometimes it seems that they don't care about the environment, they don't care about the workers that actually work for the companies. So how can we actually, as South African citizens, how can we keep both government as well as big corporations to account for the way that they impact society in South Africa, but also the way that they impact the environment here in South Africa?
Today's session, the chairperson of the Alternative Mining Indaba, Eric Mukua, laid the basis of what he thought was happening in the sector, in particularly the issue that people are trying to brandish certain things that are bad as good, using certification and standards, kind of hoodwinking people. And then the keynote address was presented by Nukaitobi Tembeka, who's our judge in the genocide case. And he made an incredible input about the inequality that prevails in the country, and what kind of pressures we need to put on the ministry to overcome that, the Ministry of Mines. And he's also the lawyer that represents the communities against Shell, and also in Kolobeni case, where people try to resist and have successfully resisted the mining Australian mining company there. And he was basically saying to us that inequality in South Africa has grown, that there are more billionaires now, white billionaires and millionaires, than ever it was under apartheid. And in fact, in my own search, out of the 6 billionaires, right, Johan Rupert, Koos Becker, Michel Leroux, Christo Wiese, only one person there, and this is Patrice Motsepe. So 5 out of the 6. And the reason why I was looking at that, and I was also looking at some of the figures of what poverty and inequality, that the top 10% of the country own 85%, or 85% of the wealth in the country, right? And that people are short of assets. He says it's not about knowledge. There's a lot of people who are clever and homeless, but they don't have assets.
Yeah.
So he was spending a lot of time there, and he was basically telling us that we are continuing the kind of colonial paradigm, if not worsening it. And there's a need for us to push very hard, and lawyers can't resolve everything. He said there was a lot of concentration of power. He reminded us of the court case where Agri SA tried to take in 2013 the government to court when the mining law was introduced, the MPRDA, to 2013, but the law was 2002. And basically making the case for expropriation. Now, he said also that land ownership is moving away from black people's hands. In fact, more and more ownership is concentrated in those who are powerful, and that we should use the current attempts at reforming the MPRDA to push for a lot more rights to redress for communities, and stuff like that. A very, very interesting discussion on the court cases and the decisions made then to affirm expropriation. Now, the reason why I was also interested in this, besides being an active member in this space, I was interested to know, how do we respond to Elon Musk and the yellow-haired man's comments, right?
Donald Trump.
Yeah, that this clearly it was an intervention to aim at threatening us through social media. It's not a law. It's not a law. And we go jittery, buy a bung. We're like going on like it. The truth is, we need to tell them, as EFF and others have come through the party, that the way they're talking, that they think we're going to buckle. This is our chance to show that we're not a banana republic. And I liked Mr. Malema's inputs, where he said that they went for Cyril thinking that he was going to be weak because he's in the GNU, not to go ahead. These things have been resolved before. In my own, I did some small research, and I found in 1991, the mining law then actually made, this is not before the democracy, made provision for expropriation. In fact, in the cases that took place, he refers to a Judge Froneman, who looked at Europe and the best cases where they also have expropriation. And in cases where these cannot and should not be justified, like in the case of redress measures, and that's clearly justified. When there's an overreach, you can find out that it's wrong. But, and there's also compensation. There are various ways. And it was interesting because often we just criticize the mining law. But in some ways, it is historic what was achieved. Before, the minerals under the land was owned by private people. Now it's no longer the case. It's owned, supposedly progressive. It's owned by all of us, you, myself. And the problem is in implementation. It's there where the crooks and the other
That's where the corruption comes in.
And that's the problem. So the idea was right, very revolutionary, but we have yet to see the fruits of that. So these problems is what we have to try and refine. I also raised in question 2, Nukai Toby, I said, hey, we're not talking enough about the sub-region. Before under apartheid, I think you're younger, that you wouldn't have such an interest as we did under apartheid. We knew what was happening in Mozambique, and we had to take care because our liberations was intertwined. Mozambique, Namibia. In fact, these guys formed frontline states. And what is interesting now, if I talk to you why we should be interested, we should be interested because in the DRC, for example, you have, they say some of our soldiers got killed, 13 or 14 or so.
Guys, yeah.
Now, and everyone simply takes this as a military battle. Rwanda has been backing these M23 rebels, and at the core of this is the 3TG minerals,
Mm.
right? Those minerals that are very critical for aerospace, for electric motor vehicles, for various things like that. In fact, tomorrow we're getting the lawyer to speak to us online at 4 o'clock tomorrow. He's taking the court case against Apple.
Mm.
So it's Congo, he represents the government of Congo against Apple.
Mm.
So our government, and I know there are problems about the looting and the abuse of army, etc., but there's a strategic region that we can't get out. We live in the continent.
Mm.
And while corruption may be there, we must make sure that we mitigate that.
Mm.
But the bigger picture is that we cannot allow the genocide that's taking place in the DRC.
Mm.
That some people put the figures high as 6,000, 4.5 million have been relocated. Some of them come to Cape Town as car guards and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And we just want to beat up these guys because we think they're foreigners. That's crap. We've got to take a broader understanding. It's the wealthiest country, most populous, but it's in the Southern African region.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see how that whole situation in the DRC also unfolds. But also, you touched on the topic of expropriation. I'd like to get your thoughts on how this new expropriation act will actually impact justice in the mining sector and what that will mean for ordinary South Africans as well. But for now, we are going to break for us, inshallah. When we come back, we will continue with that conversation. Okay, so we're going to come back at about 10 to
Good.
about a 10-minute break.
Oh, shukran. I should put on my jacket, then I can.